Your last breakup is running your love life. Your last failed project is choosing which risks you take, and you have no idea it's happening. That one bad experience, the one still fresh, still sharp, has quietly become the lens you use for every decision ahead of you. By the end of this, you'll see exactly how that lens distorts and how to take it off. Think about the last time you got burned. Maybe a business deal went sideways. Maybe you trusted someone and they disappeared. Maybe you poured months into something and watched it collapse. Now think about what happened next. You got cautious, selective, you built a wall and called it wisdom. But the wall wasn't built from everything you've learned. It was built from one moment, the most recent one. Psychologists call this recency bias. Your brain weighs what just happened far more heavily than what happened over years. A decade of successful investments means less to your gut than the one stock that cratered last Tuesday. 12 good flights vanish after one bout of turbulence. The math is absurd when you lay it out. Your brain does it anyway. So why does the newest memory get to be the loudest? Your mind processes recent events with a vividness that older memories can't compete with. The details are crisper, the emotions are raw. You can still feel the sting of that conversation, the exact words someone used, the way your stomach dropped. Compare that to a success from 3 years ago. It's blurry, warm maybe, but the edges have softened. Recent pain arrives in high definition. Old wins stream in low resolution, and when your brain has to choose which signal to trust for the next decision, it picks the sharpest image every time. A fund manager named Stanley Druckenmiller once described how even the best traders fall into this trap. After a losing streak, they shrink their positions. They get timid at exactly the moment the market is offering the best opportunities. The loss is so recent, it drowns out decades of pattern recognition. They know the statistics, they've studied the cycles. Their body overrides all of it because last week still hurts. You do the same thing in your relationships, your career, your health. One harsh rejection at a job interview rewires your confidence for months. Meanwhile, the 5 callbacks you got last year fade into background noise. The rejection is louder because it's closer. The callbacks require effort to remember. Your brain is lazy about retrieval and aggressive about self-protection. And the distortion cuts both ways. Recency bias doesn't just make you too cautious. Sometimes it makes you reckless. Picture someone who just landed a huge win. A promotion, a lucky investment, a relationship that started like a movie. Everything they touch feels golden. So they overextend, they take on debt because the money keeps flowing. They skip due diligence because the last 3 deals worked out. They mistake a hot streak for skill. Then the correction comes, and it comes hard, and they can't understand what went wrong because their recent history told them they were untouchable. The pattern is the same in both directions. One vivid recent experience hijacks the forecast for everything ahead. Here's what makes this harder to fight than most biases. Recency bias feels rational. When you avoid something because the last attempt went badly, you feel like you're being smart, careful. You're learning from experience. Except you're learning from a sample size of 1, and it happens to be the sample your brain grabbed because it was sitting on top of the pile. That's sampling from the junk drawer and calling it research. Daniel Kahneman's work on judgment under uncertainty showed that people consistently anchor to available information rather than representative information. What's available? Whatever is recent, emotional, and easy to recall. Your brain treats recall speed as a proxy for importance. If it comes to mind fast, it must matter more. A useful shortcut when you're dodging predators on a savanna. A terrible one when you're deciding whether to start a business after your last one failed. You've watched a friend go through this. They date one person who lies to them, and suddenly everyone is suspicious. They apply that single data point across the entire population. You can see it clearly when someone else does it. Spotting it in yourself is a different game entirely. Your own recent experiences feel like truth, not data. That's the trap's design. So what actually breaks the cycle? The first move is brutally simple. Widen the frame. When you catch yourself making a decision based on how the last attempt went, force yourself to count further back. Write down the last 10 times you did something similar. All 10. The recent failure will still be on the list, but now it sits alongside 9 other data points. Often the picture looks completely different when you zoom out. That one catastrophe shrinks to its actual proportion. One event among many. A therapist I know uses this technique with clients recovering from betrayal. She asks them to list every person who kept a promise to them in the last year. Every single one. The list gets long. Dozens of names. Co-workers who showed up. Friends who called back. Family who followed through. Against that ledger, one betrayal still hurts, but it stops looking like evidence that people can't be trusted. It starts looking like what it is: one person who broke a pattern. The second move is labeling the bias in real time. When you feel yourself flinching away from something, ask one question: am I reacting to the full picture or to the last frame? That question alone creates a gap between the impulse and the action. The gap is everything. Inside that gap, you can choose based on the weight of evidence rather than the weight of emotion. Athletes train this way. A basketball player who misses 3 shots in a row faces an overwhelming urge to stop shooting. Every coach in the league will tell you the same thing. The math says, keep shooting. Your shooting percentage over a season doesn't change because of a 3-minute cold streak. The player who adjusts after 3 misses is playing against their own recency bias. The player who keeps shooting is playing the actual odds. There's a subtlety worth sitting with though. Recency bias is genuinely useful in some situations. If you touched a hot stove 5 seconds ago, you should absolutely weight that recent experience heavily. The bias evolved for real-time physical danger. The problem is that your brain can't tell the difference between a hot stove and a difficult conversation. It applies the same weighting to a bear in the woods and a bear market in your portfolio. The machinery is identical. The contexts couldn't be more different. Your job is to be the filter your brain refuses to be. Recent experience gets a vote. It just doesn't get a veto. Consider what you've been avoiding lately. There's probably something. A conversation you need to have, a project you've been circling, a risk that makes your chest tight. Now trace that avoidance back. When did it start? Almost certainly after one specific event, one meeting that went wrong, one attempt that fell flat, one moment that your brain stamped with red ink and filed under "never again." That file is a lie, a single page pretending to be an encyclopedia. The people who build extraordinary lives aren't immune to this bias. They feel the same flinch after failure. The difference is what happens in the next 5 seconds. They recognize the flinch as a signal from the most recent event, acknowledge it, and then pull up the longer record. They override the thumbnail with the full album. That override is a skill. It gets stronger with practice, and it's all good at first, like writing with your other hand. Critics will say some experiences genuinely should change your behavior permanently. And that's fair. If a pattern repeats across many data points, that's a trend, and adjusting makes sense. The distinction is between a pattern and a single vivid moment pretending to be a pattern. One betrayal in a decade of trust is a data point. 5 betrayals from the same type of situation is a signal. The bias makes both feel identical. Your job is to count. You're carrying decisions right now that were made by a version of you still flinching from the last hit. Projects you won't start. Versions of yourself you've shelved because one attempt didn't land. Each of those shelved versions was based on a single frame from the end of the reel. Rewind the tape. Watch the whole thing. The story is longer than you remember, and most of it is evidence that you're more capable than your last stumble suggests. The flinch will still come. Let it arrive, let it speak, and then ask it one question: when did this happen, and is once really enough to rewrite everything?